Everyone laughed when he paid only 7 cents for the nearly 2-meter-tall woman the others called useless. They said no work could benefit from such misdirected strength, and that she would only bring trouble. But the farmer looked at her as if he saw something no one else could. It was a humid February morning in 1857, in the central square of Vesuras, deep in the interior river of January. The Paraiba Valley was thick with the smell of ripe coffee and human sweat. Dozens of landowners wandered around the wooden platform where men, women, and children were displayed like livestock. The auctioneer, a heavy man with a curled mustache and a sharp voice, shouted each sale as if he were presenting fine horses. When the woman stepped onto the platform, silence settled. Not admiration, but unease. She stood almost 6'4", shoulders broad, hands enormous, bare feet leaving dents in the wood. A torn cotton dress barely concealed her angular body, all sharp lines and sculpted muscles shaped by hunger and forced labor. Her hair was shaved close. Her dark eyes did not focus on anyone. They stared beyond the crowd, far from there. The auctioneer introduced her with fading enthusiasm. Her name was Alzira 23, from the Reconcavo region of Bahia. Strong as an ox, he said, but no overseer had ever managed to control her. She had passed through 4 plantations, obeyed no command, served no purpose, trouble, and nothing more. He tried to start the bidding. 5 rees, 3, 2, 1. The crowd drifted away. A deep voice finally broke the air. 7 cents. Heads torned. Antonio Fejas, owner of a modest coffee farm with 80 enslaved workers, stood calmly. A man in his 50s, gray-bearded, dressed simply. He was not wealthy, not influential. He survived by stretching every coin life allowed him. Laughter erupted around him. 7 cents for that giant. Antonio had lost his senses. The auctioneer, relieved to sell her at all, ended the bidding quickly. Se Wasis. Antonio climbed up, took the chain from her ankle, and led her away. She made no sound, her expression empty and distant. They walked nearly 2 miles back to his farm. Antonio rode ahead, on an old buckskin horse. She followed behind, feet bleeding on the dusty road. He said nothing the entire way. By the time they arrived, the sky was streaked orange and purple. Antonio dismounted, tied his horse, and guided her straight into the barn. A wide wooden building, filled with tools, hay, and the smell of stored coffee. He shut the door. She stood silently at the center. Antonio lit an oil lamp and watched the glow shift across her features. He sat on a small stool and observed her. He asked if she knew how to read. She did not move. He asked if she knew how to fight. Her eyes twitched almost in. He walked to a corner, returned with a hunting knife, held it by the blade, and placed it on the floor between them. He told her that if she wanted to kill him, he would not defend himself. If she preferred to hear his words, she could sit in the hay. She stared at the knife, then at him. Slowly she ignored the weapon and sat where he indicated, folding her knees to her chest. Antonio took a breath, as if preparing to speak a truth sealed inside him for years. He told her he once had a son, named Rafael, a bright and curious boy who loved watching cap. One day the boy tried to imitate a move, fell badly, and struck his head. Antonio buried him with his own hands. The barn fell quiet. He explained that since that day, he had learned to see differently. People believed he had bought her out of pity or foolishness, but he saw something familiar in her eyes, something fierce, something that reminded him of the boy he had lost. He saw fight. He told her she would not work in the fields, nor in the house. He wanted her to help him train a group preparing to escape. They needed someone who could teach them to defend themselves. He had seen her fight before. She was not wild. She was misused. He told her that if someday she wished to leave, she would walk out freely, without chains, without pursuit. After a long silence, she finally asked why he had chosen her. He answered that no one else saw value where he did. The barn fell quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. Not hostile, not empty. It felt like the beginning of something. An alliance. A turning point that would change the destiny of that farm and of Alzira herself forever. The next morning, before the first hint of light, Antonio returned to the barn. Alzira was awake. She had not slept. The thin blanket he had left untouched lay folded beside her. She sat with her back against a wooden post, her gaze steady, alert, unafraid now, but studying him like a stranger whose purpose still needed proof. He motioned for her to follow. They walked into the forest behind the farm, moving through a narrow path, hidden under bamboo and vines. The dawn mist clung to their skin. Birds stirred, but the world felt muted, as if holding its breath. They reached a small clearing carved between old jacaranda trees. A circle of rope had been stretched between trunks. Wooden logs, sacks of sand, and stones were arranged, like crude training tools. Antonio stepped inside the circle and nodded. This, he said, was where everything would begin. Alzira looked around as if she were measuring the weapons, the possibilities, the exits. Her muscles tensed subtly, the way a caged animal prepares for attack or escape. Antonio raised a hand, not in command, but in invitation. "Show me what you know." For a moment, she did not move. Then, slowly, she stepped into the circle. Her posture changed. Her shoulders rolled back. Her feet grounded themselves in the soil. She became heavier, anchored, present. Her eyes sharpened into something dangerous. She struck the first sack of sand. The sound echoed through the trees. She hit it again, harder, until the sack swung violently, rope straining. Antonio watched without speaking. He took mental notes of everything: the angle of her punches, the way she shifted her weight, the flicker of instinct that revealed a fighter shaped by survival rather than training. When she stopped, her breath came heavy, her knuckles raw and bleeding. Antonio stepped forward. For the first time, his voice held firmness rather than gentleness. "You're strong, brutally strong. But strength without control is a fire without a hearth. It burns everything, including what you want to protect." She stared at him, sweaty, wounded, but unyielding. He pointed to the circle. "Again. But this time, breathe before you strike. Think before you hit." Alzira closed her eyes. Her chest rose and fell. When she opened them again, something had shifted. She hit the sack with purpose, not rage. Cleaner, sharper. The sound was different. Now focused, precise. Antonio nodded. Better. They trained until the sun rose high. When they returned to the farm, the other workers glanced at them with curiosity, so may with fear. Some with hope. Rumors spread quickly. The new woman, the giant, the one who did not bow her head, and the old farmer who walked beside her as if guarding a secret. Days passed, then weeks, then months. The training grew harder. Antonio taught her footwork, drawn from old boxing sketches he had studied as a boy. He taught her how to read an opponent, how to hold back power until the moment it mattered. Alzira learned faster than he expected. On the days when rage threatened to break her form, he made her run through the trails until her breath steadied. On the nights when old memories overwhelmed her, she sat outside the barn alone, staring at the stars. Antonio sometimes watched from a distance, never approaching unless she gestured him closer. A strange partnership formed, one built on silence, wounds, and purpose. But something else was stirring beyond the farm. Whispers, movement, a group of enslaved workers planning to run, a coordinated escape, a chance for real freedom. And Alzira, with her growing strength and sharpened discipline, was becoming the center of that hope. One night, after training had ended and the moon was high, a young man approached the barn. His hands shook, his voice trembled as he spoke to Alzira. He said they needed someone strong, someone fearless, someone who could fight if things went wrong. He said the others believed she might be the one. Alzira looked at him, then at Antonio, who had stepped out of the shadows behind them. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Alzira exhaled slowly, as if a weight had shifted inside her. The clearing in the forest had taught her discipline. Antonio had taught her precision. Suffering had taught her endurance. But destiny, it seemed, was about to teach her something far greater. Purpose. She nodded once. Slowly, the young man stared in disbelief. Antonio watched her with a quiet, heavy understanding. The path ahead would be brutal. Not all would survive it, but for the first time in her life, Alzira no longer walked as property or prisoner. She walked as someone who would decide the fate of others. And fate, like fire, burned brightest in those who had survived the darkest nights.